So we are approaching Rosh Hashana. This coming Motzei Shabbos is the first day of Slichas, and we only have a week to go. A week to go to the magnificent day of Rosh Hashana, the first of Aseres Yemei Tshuva, Yom Hadin HaMishpat V'Harachamim. And the topic we will be discussing today is a fascinating one: Simcha b'Rosh Hashana and Yom Kippur. We are all very well aware, and we feel it in our hearts, V'samachtu b'chagecha, each and every Yom Tov. But Rosh Hashana is different, somewhat different. It is a more complex Yom Tov, a combination of contradictory emotions. On one hand, a Yom Adin. This is a day of judgment, a day of mishpat, a day in which each and every one of us stands before HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Melech b'mishpat yamed eretz. Each and every one of us knows that this is a fateful day in which destinies are determined. On the other hand, it's a Yom Tov. Is there a mitzvah of Simcha in Rosh Hashana? There are three different opinions among the Rishonim whether a person could fast on Rosh Hashana. Some Rishonim maintain, yes, it is permissible, because fasting is beneficial to tshuva, to kapora. So this is a question discussed by the major Rishonim. Rosh, the end of Rosh Hashana. Perek Dalet Siman Yud Dalet. The Mordechai in the beginning of Masechet Rosh Hashana. Siman Tafshin Chet. Sefer Kolbo. Siman Samachay. So the Kolbo maintains that it is permissible and even a mitzvah to fast on Rosh Hashana. The Rosh quotes, and the Mordechai as well, most of the Gaonim that ruled it is a prohibition. Rav Hai Goen, Mara Sar Sholem Goen, Ritz Geyes, Rav Nachshon Goen. These were all giants in the period of the Gaonim. The Ravya and many other Rishonim. Harav Natronai Goen offered a compromise. First day of Rosh Hashanah, you cannot fast because it's Min HaTorah. It's a Yom Tov D'Oraisa. Second day of Rosh Hashanah, one could fast. And the Rosh rejects this compromise because he quotes the Navi, Perek Ches, Sefer Nehemiah, Posek Yud, dealing with Rosh Hashanah, Ichlu Madanim, Shtu Mamtakim, Shulchan Monos La'enoch Aloi, Al Teyut Tzevu, Ki Kodesh Hayom La'Adonenu, Chedves Hashem Hima'uschem. And this posuk obviously refers to both days of Rosh Hashanah. However, there's a very original idea of the Netziv, typical of the Netziv in Hamik Dovar, Vayikro Parshas Emor, Perek Chov Gimel, Posuk Chov Dalet. Posuk Echad Omer Yom Trua, and the other posuk says Yom Zichron Trua. So the Netziv says that the essence of Shnei Yomim Shel Rosh Hashanah, the first day, is dedicated to the coronation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You are probably all familiar with the 10 different reasonings, 10 different ta'amim for Tkiyah Shofar that we find in all the Machzorim written by Rav Sadia Gaon. So the first reason to blow Shofar is when we coronate a king, that was the custom. They blew with 1,000 horns and 1,000 trumpets. So Tkiyah Shofar is associated with Malchus Shemayim. That is the essence of Yom Aleph Shel Rosh Hashanah. The second day of Rosh Hashanah is a day of judgment. So the Netziv argues when the Navi says, Ichlu Madanim Shtu Mamtakim Chedves Hashem Hima'uschem, that's referring only to the first day of Rosh Hashanah. According to Netziv, we could very well appreciate the opinion of Rav Natronai Gaon. First day of Rosh Hashanah, you cannot fast because that is a day to rejoice. That is the Simcha of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Second day, is dedicated primarily to din and mishpat, to tshuva, to kapara, and therefore the second day, according to this Goin, one is entitled to fast. Most of the Shainim and most Goinim maintain that one cannot fast neither first day nor second day. And they offer three different tamim, three different reasons to prohibit and to reject the meaning of fasting and Rosh Hashanah. Number one is Mikra Kodesh, and the Sifri and the Sifro both interpret Mikra Kodesh l'achila v'l'shtiyah. It isn't a decisive argument because Yom Kippur is also defined as Mikra Kodesh, and Yom Kippur there definitely is an Issa D'Oraisa, Chiyuv Koros, and Achila v'shtiyah. Second reason is Rosh Hashanah is described and defined as a Chag. B'kesel le'yoim chageinu. If it's a Chag, then we have a mitzvah v'samachtu b'chagech. So how could one fast? Third reason is the Posek and Navi that I just quoted in Sefer Nehemiah, Ichlo Mashmanim, Shtu Mamtakim, Shulchan Monois, Le'ein Nochan. Shulchan Aruch Tov Kuf Tzadik Zayin in the first Sif. Oichlem v'shoisem v'smeichem v'ein misanin b'Rosh Hashanah. So obviously the Psak of the Shulchan Aruch is in accordance to the Psak of the Torah, the Psak of the Rosh, and the vast majority of Rishonim. However, the Ramah and Siv Gimel brings that there is an opinion that one could fast, that it's even a mitzvah to fast on Rosh Hashanah. But the Psak of the Shulchan Aruch and all the other major poskim is Oichlem v'shoisem v'smeichem b'Rosh Hashanah v'ein misanim. However, the Simcha Rosh Hashanah is somewhat subdued. It is not the same as other Yom Tovim. And the Mechaber says, Loi yoichlu lissov am kedei shelo yakelu Rosh v'teyeh yiras Hashem al penayhem. And therefore, the Simcha should not be excessive. It should be somewhat, it checks and balances, somewhat subdued. And the Magen Avraham brings that the Marshal didn't eat fish, even though he was very fond of fish, but he didn't eat fish on Rosh Hashanah. He also quotes the Magid Meishorim, which is the Bis Yosef in this week's Parsha, Parshas Netzavim, that one in Rosh Hashanah should not eat bosa v'yayin. And that seems to be a tremendous chiddush. Because if we paskin that Oichlem v'shoisem v'smeichem b'Rosh Hashanah, smeichem, that means Rosh Hashanah is a chag, and the tzivui, the mitzvah v'samachtu b'chagecho refers to Rosh Hashanah. Ein simcha le'bosa v'yayin, that's a Gemara Psachim Kuftes, a Rambam in Perek Vav, Halacha Yud Zayin, Halacha Yud Ches, and Hilchos Yom Tov. So if the halacha is that there is a mitzvah of simcha in Rosh Hashanah, how do we abstain from bosa v'yayin when Chazal say that is the essence of simcha and simcha ela b'bosa v'yayin? So obviously this ruling of the Magid Mishorim of the Magen Avraham must maintain that there is no real mitzvah of simcha in Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is not defined as a chag. The mitzvah of samachta b'chagecho refers only to shalosh regolim. But the reason we are to be happy in Rosh Hashanah, we are to eat and drink, is either because of Mikra Kodesh, either because of the Navi. Ichlo mashmanim, shtu mamtakim. But the Mechaber says, smeich. And if the Magen Avraham rejects the Mechaber, at least he should note that what he is writing doesn't go together with the Psak of the Shulchan Aruch. So obviously the Magen Avraham sees no contradiction between what he says that one should not eat meat and drink wine and the Mechaber. Even more than that, the Magen Avraham quotes the Magid Mishorim. Magid Mishorim is the Beis Yosef. So sometimes there are somewhat contradictions between Kabbalah and Halacha. Magid Mishorim is not halachic literature, it is based kol kulei on Kabbalah, but it would seem strange that the Magid Mishorim says A and the Mechaber says B. One could prove l'chorei from the Rambam that Rosh Hashanah is Yom Tov Mamish, and there is a mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov. Because the Rambam writes in Perek Vav Halacha Yud Zayin of Hilchos Yom Tov, and I'm quoting the Lashon of the Rambam, Sheves Yemei HaPesach v'Shmonis Yemei HaChagim, Shah Yomim Tovim, Kulam Asurim Behesped V'Tanas, V'Chai Avodom Liyois B'Hem, Sameach V'Toiv Lev, Hu V'Bono V'Yishtoi V'Bnei Veisoi, V'Kol Anil V'Melav, Shenema V'Samachto B'Chagach. So what does the Mechaber mean when he writes Shivas Yemei HaPesach, Shmonis Yemei HaChag, Im Shar Yomim Tov. What's left? Besides Shiva Simei Pesach v'Shmoni Simei Chag. So he explicitly mentioned Sukkot, Pesach, and Shmini Atzeres. If the mitzvah of Simcha refers only to Shorosh HaGolim, that the only other Yom Tov is Atzeres, why would the Rambam write Shiva Simei Pesach, Shmoni Simei Chag, Im Shar Yomim Tovim? That's 4 words. He should have wrote 1 additional word. Shiva Simei Pesach, Shmoni Simei Chag, V'Atzeres. V'Chag Atzeres, 2 words. That would be very strange that I'm reminding Im Shar Yomim Chag if there's only 1 more day. I think that proves he means Atzeres, he means the Rosh Hashana, and therefore he writes Im Shar Yemei Achag. So it seems to be obvious in the Rambam that this interpretation is correct, that there is a mitzvah v'samachtu b'chagecho in Rosh Hashana. And therefore my interpretation would be this. Might sound as a chiddush, but I think it's misyashev al alev. The basic mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov is defined by the Rambam in the passage in the halacha I just quoted. Chayev odom liyois sameach v'tov alev. Hu ve'ishtoi ve'bono ve'bnei beisoi ve'kol anil ve'melo. Liyois sameach v'tov alev. Chazal teach us how does one execute Simcha. What is the hanhoga of Simcha? How does Simcha manifest itself in a person's behavior? So Chazal say, every individual in his own way. Anoshim b'bosav yayin, noshim b'bigdei tzavonim, tinoikis b'kloyis v'agoyzim. But these are only expressions of Simcha. It is not the essence. Mitzvah Simcha and Yom Tov is not eating meat and drinking wine and children eating nuts. It is Liyoy Sameach V'Toiv Leiv. We are to express our Simcha. It should not be merely in the realm of one's feelings and emotions, but that is more flexible. I said in the past, if a person doesn't enjoy wine and he doesn't like meat, he has difficulty eating meat, he's not mechuyev. So Chazal say, and it's quoted in the Rambam and Shulchan Aruch, Tanoikis v'kloyes ve'egoizim. Try to offer your kids nuts as a snack today. L'chovet Simchas Yom Tov, your kids will say, Daddy, Bamba. Bamba. Get it into your head. Kids don't eat nuts today. So is a person supposed to impose nuts on his kids because the Rambam says nuts and Chazal say nuts? How about big date tzavonim for his wife? And his wife says, I don't like flowery dresses. I like something that is more subdued. I like black. I like white. Would he say no? But the Gemara says big tzavonim. That is what Chazal said. That's the way we have to be mekayim the mitzvah. Chazal just gives the idea how to make people happy. So today, don't try to force your kids to eat nuts. Give them bamba or biscuit or whatever they want. And if your wife doesn't like color dresses, let her buy a dress that she likes. And if you have difficulty eating meat or drinking wine, then you enjoy Yom Tov in the way you enjoy Yom Tov. It is only Bizman Beis HaMikdash that the mitzvah is dafka b'bosa shlomim, because that's a korban. But not nowadays. So what I'm trying to make clear basically is that the Ikka mitzvah of Simchas Yom Tov is Liyoy Sameach V'Toiv Leiv. All the rest is expressions of Simcha. And therefore, it is not a Teime B'Yeinai. If Rosh Hashana, which is a day of tshuva and hachnoah and kapora, and fasting is beneficial to tshuva and it enhances kapora, there is a mitzvah of Simcha and Rosh Hashanah, but the expressions would be different expressions. it would be more an internal Simcha, even though one would maintain that there's a mitzvah of Simcha Mamish on Rosh Hashana Kach Nera La'aniyas Daiti. Two great Gedalim. If anybody knows the history in the last few hundred years of Gedali Yisrael, of the development of Torah in Europe, the true greatest Gedalim 150 years ago in Galicia were Reb Shlomo Kluger and Reb Yosef Shol Natanson, two phenomenal sages. Both bring l'cha'oira, a very clear source that there is a mitzvah of Simcha on Rosh Hashanah, and one is prohibited to fast. Reb Shlomo Kluger Chochmah Shlomo Tov Kuf Tzadik Zayin in Shulchan Aruch, and Reb Yosef Shol Natanson in Sefer Meforshei Hayam on Yom HaTalmud. Let me give you a brief introduction to Reb Yosef Shol Natanson. When I was a young boy, I was tremendously inspired by his form. I used to spend days and nights. I was fascinated by the godless, by the personality, by the greatness of the Shoel HaMeshiv. I spent days and nights learning his form, and I knew by heart a major portion of the Shoel HaMeshiv when I was a young boy. Shoel HaMeshiv was an Ilui. He got married when he was 17. His brother-in-law was also one of the future Gedali Yisrael of Motchazev Ettinger. They learned Bechavrusa and wrote many Sforim together, Bechavrusa. So the first Sefer was published when Rabbi Yosef Shol Natanson was 17 years old, and his brother-in-law Motchazev was 21. They went over the Yom HaTalmud of their uncle, who was a brother of the Yeshuas Yankov. They were nephews of the Yeshuas Yankov. And they wrote Hagos. And at the end of that Sefer, there's an amazing series of responses. Those two young B'nai Torah wrote letters to all the Gedolei and Ziknei Ador. And they write and correspond with the Mordechai ben Eter, the Kiva Eiger, the Chassam Sofer, the Tiv Gittin, any other Gedolei. One of those letters, Rabbi Yosef Shol and Motchazev come up with the same argument as Reb Shlomo Kluger. There's a Mishnah, Pei Gimel Amud Aleph in Masechet Chulam Barbo, Prokom Bishon Hamoicha Behem Al Chaver Tzorach Lodioi, Imo Macharti Ayon, Bito Macharti Ayon. There's an Isser of Oysa V'Yes Benoi Lo Yishachtu B'Yom Echad. We cannot slaughter an animal and its offspring in the same day. So in these 4 days, many people slaughter animals to prepare tzorchi suda. Obviously, those 4 days are the days in which Bnei Yisrael ate more meat than all year round, and therefore, when you sell an animal and you assume it will be slaughtered, it will be shechted, you need to notify the purchaser, the buyer. I sold its mother, I sold its offspring, that he shouldn't be nichshal, he shouldn't violate the Yisr of Oysa V'Yes Benoi, Lo Yishachtu B'Yom Echad. One of those 4 days is Erev Rosh Hashanah. So it's a Mishnah Mefareshes that Rosh Hashanah, everybody slaughtered animals to prepare Sudas Rosh Hashanah. If it's a mitzvah to fast, how could that be? And those young two Gedolei Yisrael write that this is a tshuva raya nitzachas she'ein lahoshev aleha. And they quote their great uncle, who was already one of the major Gedolim of that period, that he agreed with them, and he said it's a raya nitzachas or leo ein lahoshev. And I wonder, whenever an Achron comes up with a raya and he argues, ein lahoshev or leo, strange to me. Do they really think that none of the Geonim and the Rishonim remember the mission? This is a sugya which goes back more than 1,000 years. The Rosh and the Mordechai and all the other Rishonim deal with this question, quoting the great Geonim, and they all bring proof and rayas and evidence, Mekan v'Mekan, and everybody forgot their Mishnah. Strange. In my opinion, it's not a raya at all. I think it's clear and obvious in all the Rishonim. Everybody agrees that Rosh Hashanah is a Yom Tov. Nobody confuses Rosh Hashanah with Tisha B'Av. Everybody agrees that Rosh Hashanah is basically a Yom Tov. And as a Yom Tov, of course, the minig was Laharbais v'Sa'uda. However, there are some Rishonim that feel that one is entitled to fast. But only very few fasted. Those Chasidim v'Yan Shemaisa, those Tzadikim, that probably fast every other day throughout the year, those Ovdei Hashem that really dedicate their lives, their nights and their days, and their very being to Avodas Elokim, to Tshuva, they were the ones that wanted to fast in Rosh Hashanah, and they was the ones that provoked this question, and they were the ones that all the Gedolim are dealing. Is one entitled to fast? And if a real Chosed and Tzaddik fast, would that be considered a mitzvah? Or rather a transgression? But that's a mitzvah de pshita. That the multitudes, of course they rejoiced. After all, Rosh Hashanah is a Yom Tov, it's Makroi Kodesh, and therefore I don't think this Mishnah proves anything. Even regarding Yom Kippur, one could contemplate, is there a mitzvah of Simcha in Yom Kippur? Yom Kippur is Makroi Kodesh. So on one hand we find a Lashon in Masechet Sofrim, Ein Yom Tov b'Yom Tzayim. But that doesn't mean there is no mitzvah of Simcha. Yoreim, Sefer Yoreim writes, there's no mitzvah Simcha Yom Tov in Yom Kippur. But maybe he also means there is no expression of Simchas Yom Tov and Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur were Chayav and Chamishu Inuyim, which are the contrast to Simcha. But I have an interesting diuk in Rambam. Perek Gimel Halacha Vov of Hilchos Chanukah, when the Rambam writes all the halachos of Alel, and the Rambam writes Ein Omer Hal Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim lefi she'ein elu yomim shel Simcha Yisera elu yomim shel Tshuva v'Yira v'Facha. The Rambam writes, these are not days of Simcha Yisera. First of all, he puts together Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, essentially being the same. Both these days are not days of excessive Simcha, of Simcha Yisera, seemingly indicating they are days of Simcha, however not Simcha Yisera. And therefore my feeling would be, as I said before, regarding Rosh Hashanah, there are many ways to express Simcha, and Simcha could manifest itself in many different ways. There's a mitzvah of Simcha and Puri, Simchas Yom Tov, Simchas Chosam V'Kala. Each of these mitzvahs manifests itself in a different way. There is a mitzvah of Simcha and Rosh Hashanah. Oichman v'shoysen v'sameichem b'Rosh Hashanah. Yom Kippur is also a day of some basic Simcha. It is a pchina of Gilu Birodo. If there was Hashem b'Yiro, v'Gilu Birodo. One cannot eat, one cannot drink. Chamishu Inuyim. But nevertheless, Chazal say Medish, it's a Simcha for a Kodesh Baruch Hu, and therefore it's a Simcha for us as well. And we are happy. And we rejoice that a Kodesh Baruch Hu gave us this unbelievably magnificent gift of Tshuva and Slicha and Kippur. And therefore the Rambam writes, it is a day of Simcha. But we don't say Hallel. Ein elu yomim shel Simcha Yisrael. Maybe we should discuss briefly a Shal Halacha L'Maisa that is dependent on the lengthy discussion we just had. Simakuf Peiches Sivav, there's a very well-known halacha, and it appears in almost every bencher and every zmiris. If one forgot to say Yalav Yovim Berch Samos and Shabbos or Yom Tov, if you already started a Toiv HaMeitiv, Choyza, he has to start benching all over again. If he did not start the fourth bracha, then he could make up for it. And he says, Baruch Atu Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher nosan Shabbosos lemenucha. Similar formulation for Yom Tov, and the same for Rosh Hashanah. But Rosh Hashanah isn't mentioned in Shulchan Aruch. The Knesset Agdola writes, self-evident, Rosh Hashanah is a Yom Tov. Would have the same din as the Yom Tov. In Shabbos, the Chasim is Baruch Atu Hashem Mekadesh HaShabbos. Yom Tov is Mekadesh Yisrael Hazmanim. So obvious in Rosh Hashanah we would say Mekadesh Yisrael Yom HaZikaron. But the Magen Avraham Sifkot Nalaf says no. And he argues. If you started at Toiv HaMeit of Rosh Hashanah, you do not have to repeat Berchas HaMazon, because of the opinions that one is entitled to fast on Rosh Hashanah. If one is entitled to fast, then Berchas HaMazon is not obligatory, it's not a chayvah, then it's like Rosh Chodesh. If you forgot Yalav Yuva Rosh Chodesh, you don't have to bench all over again. And therefore the Magen Avraham argues Rosh Hashanah is a din of Rosh Chodesh. You forgot Yalav Yuva, you started at Toiv HaMeitiv, you don't have to bench over. Another chiddush the Magen Avraham argues is, like Rosh Chodesh, there is no chasima in the Brocha K'tzora, which is a substitute to Yalav Yavai. There is no chasima on Rosh Hashanah because of the same reason. And this is a major argument between Achrayim. Halacha Knesset Agdola Magen Avraham. The Eliyahu Rabbah rejects the Magen Avrahami's opinion on both counts. Sha'ar Tzion, Mishnah Brura, Kuf Peches, Sif Koten Tes Vav, I think, is mechalek between the two different halachas in the Magen Avraham. And he says, even if we would agree with the Magen Avraham regarding Chayzah, and we would accept his opinion that if you forgot Yalav Yavai and you started at Toiv HaMeitiv, Einoi Chayzah L'Rosh, because in that case we rely on the opinions that one could fast on Rosh Hashanah. Regarding the Chasima, he rejects the Magen Avraham. Because the reason Rosh Chodesh is different than Shabbos and Yom Tov regarding the Chasima is not because there's no Chayvus Suda on Rosh Chodesh, but rather because Rosh Chodesh is not defined as a Yom Tov. If that is the reason, Rosh Hashanah definitely is a Yom Tov. After all, it's Kodesh, it's also B'Malacha. There's a mitzvah of Simcha according to most Rishonim, but I think this chilek, if we observe nuances, we see it in Mishnah Brura as well. Tzivkot Niyutas. Regarding the question of Nusach, the Mishnah Brura seems to agree with the Eliyahu Rabbah. Rosh Hashanah, there is a chasima. Baruch Atu Hashem Mekadesh Yisrael Yom HaZikaron. Regarding the question Chayzah and Chayzah, he does not decide. He brings both opinions. Most Achrayim, I think, are cholek on the Magen Avraham and agree with the Knesset Agdola that the halacha would be the same. Shmi Shabbos Kol Chosa. My dear friend, Agon Arav Noivid of blessed memory. We miss him badly. Shmi Shabbos Kol Chosa Perek Nun Zayin Ha'orach Chov Gimel, who wants to be mechalek ben Yom v'Layla. And he says, by night, if you skipped Yalav Yavai, Chayzah Rosh, you have to bench again. Not by day. And he bases this chiddush, I do not recall whether it's own chiddush or Rav Shem Zalman, and he bases it on the Mishnah Brura Sivkot Nevav and many other Achronim who argue that one could fast by day Rosh Hashanah, but not by night. Mishnah Brura quotes Poskim. He doesn't write which Poskim. So I want to take a few minutes just to clarify this point. Why would there be a difference between day and night? The Magen Avraham Sivkot and Gimel differentiates between day and night, but that Magen Avraham has nothing to do with our discussion. Siv Gimel Shulchan Aruch in Tov Kuf Tzadik Zayin deals with Tanis Chaloim, and the Magen Avraham says Tanis Chaloim is only by day, not by night. And that is Pasha. What is Tanas Chalaim? If you had a bad dream, a nightmare by night, then you fast in the morning. And you need to fast in that same day. So there could never be a Tanas Chalaim Balayla. And therefore, Rosh Hashana, one needs to eat. But the Magen Avraham is referring to Tanas Chalaim. The Mishnah Berurah quotes that the Poskim say that even those opinions that say one is entitled to fast and Rosh Hashanah without any nightmares, without any dreams, just like Kippur Sadoim, by day and not by night. That is a chiddush we find in the Pnei Yeshua and Ksubas Dafei, but he doesn't explain why. What is the reasoning and the rationale to this chiddush? Why would there be a difference between day and night? I could think of two different explanations. Chazal say there is no din balayla, neither in Beis nor b'Shamayim. Mishpat is only by day. So maybe that is the reason by night you don't fast, because there is no din balayla. The mishpat is conducted only by day, and therefore by day there's reasoning to fast. By night, after all, it's Yom Tov. The other explanation might be there's a choyves kiddush, and ikra mitzvah's kiddush is balayla. There's a machlokas Rishonim with the kiddush Yom Tov is Ma'atoyim and Rabbanon, but it's a chiyuv gomer. So a minik to fast and Rosh Hashanah doesn't override kiddush. However, we explained at the beginning of the shir that might override the manifestation of Simcha and Yom Tov, because that doesn't go against the essence of mitzvah Simchas Yom Tov. However, kiddush, you need to make kiddush. Vein kiddush elo b'mokum suda, and kiddush elo alakas, and therefore one cannot fast by night. The difference between the two explanations would be: is it mechuyev to eat bread, challah, by night? If it's based on Simchas Yom Tov, and we say only by day is a person entitled to fast, like chapor savai, but not by night, then by night is Simchas Yom Tov, he needs to eat pas, and therefore Yalav Yovai would be a chiyuv, Bechsamaz would be a chiyuv. But if it's just because of kiddush mokum sudi, you don't necessarily need pas. You could eat insinis, you could eat different things. Some Rishonim maintain that even peiros would be enough for kiddush mokum suda. So the psak of Rav Noivit would depend on two different approaches regarding reasoning why one cannot fast by night. However, Shmir Shabbos Kelchosa brings a big chiddush from Reb Shimon Zalman. Chayodem Klal Chov Daled, very well known, brings a chiddush of one of the sages in Lita in his time, Reb Eveli Pasvolar. And he was Mechadish. Leil Rosh Hashanah, if you forget, HaMelech HaKodesh, Einoi Koizer. Just like Rosh Chodesh, if you forgot Yalav Yavai by night, Ein Mekachin As HaChodesh Balayla. Big chiddush. But it's quoted by the Chayot. Mishnah Berurah Shatzi and Tov Kuf Pei Beis rejects this psak. And he has a very powerful argument. He says, if you forgot Yalav Yavai Rosh Chodesh, then your tefillah is a normal tefillah. That is the tefillah one says on Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh is Yom Chol. But if you say a Yom Tov Dika tefillah and you don't say a Melech HaKodesh, that doesn't go together. It's a Yom Tov Dika tefillah. Is a tefillah of Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is a Melech HaKodesh. So that is a contradiction. So the Mishnah Berurah goes to the extreme of arguing maybe the kavana of the Chayyodam and Reb Eveli, who was quoted by the Chayyodam, is if you said a Kel HaKodesh, finish off the tefillah's chayil and not tefillah's Rosh Hashanah. But to me that would be a tremendous finish. And if that's their kavana, they should have been very clear about it. They should have said what they meant. So obviously that's not their kavana. So Reb Shimon Zalman goes on to argue, even if we reject their psak regarding tefillah, but we would accept it regarding Birchas Hamazon, because if you didn't say Alav Yavai, it's still a normal Birchas Hamazon, it's the same Birchas Hamazon. However, in my humble opinion, and I stress in my humble opinion, I think the reason to reject this psak is not over the technicality, is that a Yom Tov Dika tefillah or a tefillah's chayil. I don't think there's any makom to be medama Rosh Hashanah to Rosh Chodesh. All we have in Rosh Chodesh is Ma'ina Ma'ura. Kiddush Chodesh, that's all. Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Hashanah is a Yom Tov. Rosh Hashanah is a Yom Din. Rosh Hashanah is a totally different tefillah. And therefore, Leil Rosh Hashanah has nothing to do with Ein Mekatchen as a Chodesh. Ve'ein Mekatchen as a Shana. It's nothing to do. After all, it's Rosh Hashanah. And Rosh Hashanah is a day of Malchus, Rosh Hashanah is a day of Mishpat, Rosh Hashanah is a Yom Tov. Tefillah Rosh Hashanah would be the same as any other Yom Tov. The Azkara of Rosh Chodesh has everything to do with Kiddush HaChodesh Belvad. Lo Kain Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah would be no different than Yom Kippur. Doesn't make sense that Leil Yom Kippur Chayzo and Leil Rosh Hashanah Einay Chayzo. The essence of Rosh Hashanah is being a Yom Tov, a very special Yom Tov with so many different manifestations, and therefore omitting Melech HaKodesh B'Leil Rosh Hashanah is not the same as omitting Ya'alav Yom Rosh Chodesh. That is my humble opinion, and therefore I don't think there would be any difference between Lailo and Yom regarding the machlokes between Eliyah Rabbah and Bulan Oral. The fact that not even one of the Gedolei Achronim makes this differentiation proves more than anything else that this differentiation has no room in Allah. So we discussed a very interesting topic today: mitzvahs Simcha on Rosh Hashanah. This coming Motzei Shabbos we start Slichas. Did you ever think, why do we always start Slichas Motzei Shabbos? Regardless of how many days we say Slichas. This year we have the minimum Slichas. Rosh Hashanah is Thursday, so we only have 4 days. If Rosh Hashanah falls any other day, we have more than 4 days. But we always start Motzei Shabbos. Why? We find a fascinating reason and explanation in Leket Yosha, page 114. And I'm quoting the Leket Yosha. Toiv lahatchel miyad biyoyim alav ki uam smeichem machmas mitzvahs ha-Torah shem lo imdim b'Shabbos v'gam machmas oinik Shabbos. And the Gemara says in Shabbos, she'ein hashchina shoyer lo mitachatzvus v'lo mitachatzvus ela mitoch simcha shel mitzvah. L'chach toiv lahatchel espala mitoch simcha shel mitzvah. Interesting. Slichas and simcha, do they go together? We wouldn't guess they do, but obviously they do. That is what one of the Rishonim explains. The reason we start Slichas on Motzei Shabbos is because people are happy Motzei Shabbos after having a beautiful Shabbos, and they learn Torah Shabbos, and Oinik Shabbos still prevails, and therefore we start saying Slichas b'Simcha. Yes, just like Rosh Hashanah has its Simcha, and even Yom Kippur has its basic Simcha, Slichas has its Simcha as well. Many times in the past I quoted Rabbeinu Yoin and Brochas Tefla Medalad. Ivdu es Hashem b'yiro v'gilo bir'odo. Gilo and yiro, says Rabbeinu Yoin, fright and simcha don't go together. When a person is afraid, he cannot really be very happy. That is true regarding any other fright in human experience, not when we're dealing with Yiras Hashem. The feeling of Yiras Hashem should enhance our simcha and not diminish our simcha. We should be so grateful and so gratified that Baruch Hashem we have Yiras Hashem. We should be so gratified that we feel the closeness to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That should fill us with simcha. And therefore, ein hashchina shoyra lo mitoch atzmus ela mitoch simcha shel mitzvah. And the Navi says on Rosh Hashana, Al Teyut Seivu, Chedves Hashem, I Ma'usa. Tkiyah Shofar is a combination of two different voices, the Tkiyah and the Truah. What message do these voices convey? The Tkiyah is a call of Simcha, while the Truah reflects and conveys a broken heart. That is what we learn from Pashas V'Haloischa regarding the mitzvah of Chatzotzos. Uv'yom simchaschem uv'moyadechem uv'rosh chedshechem u'teka'atem b'chatzotzot. In days of joy, in festivals, in days of happiness, we blow the Tkiyah. V'hoyo kesavay machom al artzachem v'hariyosem. In days of fright, of trepidation, in days of awe, that's when we blow the Truah. Rosh Hashanah is a combination of the two. On one hand, Eimas Yoim Hadid, like the Rambam writes, and we quoted the Rambam before. Eino Yom Namahal Rosh Hashanah v'Yom Kippurim lefi she'ein elo Yom shel Simcha Yaseh elo Yom shel Shuva v'Yiro v'Fachat. On the other hand, Al Teyut Seva, Chedves Hashem, I Ma'usa. And that is the combination of Tkiyah and Truah. Tkiyah reflecting happiness and strength and confidence. We're confident and we believe in a Kadosh Baruch Hu, and if we will do our utmost in Tshuva, Tefillah, Tzedakah, we know and we believe that a Kadosh Baruch Hu will be Moichel, Mechaper B'Solech. And therefore we rejoice and we are happy on Rosh Hashanah. And maybe the two Tkiyahs, the double Tkiyah, Tkiyah Lefanei, Tkiyah Lachrei, come to convey two different sources, origins, and essentially do different types of Simcha. One reason to be Sameach Rosh Hashanah is because this is the day in which we are Mamlech HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the King's coronation. And who makes a Kodesh Baruch Hu into a king, if not us? His loyal slaves and servants. So we rejoice b'malchus Shemayim. Maybe that is the first Tkiyah that comes before the Truah. But Malchus incurs judgment, because that is what kings do. Kings are to judge their people. And therefore the Truah follows the first Tkiyah. The second Tkiyah is the Tkiyah of Betochen and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes to judge us, we know that the King is the most merciful King that can ever be, with infinite love and mercy. And that is why HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us Lashona and Yom Kippur. So the second Tkiyah conveys and reflects our B'tochen. Rabbeinu Shalom Avinu Shebashamayim will try our best in Tshuva, in Tefillah, and Tzedakah. And we are confident that you will be Moichel Saleach U'Mechap. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Rachamim is infinite. There are some amazing mamorim that we find in Yerushalmi, Sanhedrin, and Mem Tes Amud Aleph. Ein shechacho lefnei kisei kvodecha, avol b'shvil Yisrael na'asa shachachan. Kodesh Baruch Hu forgets our transgressions and our shortcomings. He forgets because he wants to forget, and everything is biyad Hashem. Well, somewhat of a contradiction, paradox. Could HaKadosh Baruch Hu forget? That's philosophical calisthenics. If we say HaKadosh Baruch Hu forgets, then that is a shortcoming. If we say HaKadosh Baruch Hu cannot forget, that is a shortcoming. HaKadosh Baruch Hu could do anything. Let's leave that for the philosophers. Irrelevant. That is what the Yerushalmi says. When he wishes to forget our Avedas and our transgressions, Bishvil Yisrael Nasa Shach. And in that same page in Yerushalmi, there's another amazing man. When a person is machza, schuyus, and machatza chayvus, and the Malach Toiv turns over everything, and he finds not one more mitzvah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu noise eloi mididei. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us another mitzvah. He has enough mitzvahs up there in the heavens. If we're short one mitzvah, and that would make the difference, l'shevet or l'chesed, HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes a mitzvah from his oitzah. Probably a mitzvah performed by one of those great tzaddikim who have Mesias Nefesh for Klal Yisrael. One of those great tzaddikim that dedicate their Torah and their mitzvahs not only for their own benefit but for their people, for Amchu Beis Yisrael. So let us all hope and daven that the Kodesh Baruch Hu shall have racham mishamayim. We would do our best in tshuva, tefillah, and tzedakah, and simcha, in total confidence that the Kodesh Baruch Hu will be makabel barachamim avarotzah. The sparks of tshuva in our hearts, the nitzotzot of tshuva in our hearts. We should be zoichet together with Kol Beis Yisrael to aksiva v'chasim atoivet to Hashana toivet v'mesuk Hashana b'sudas toivus. This is the last Shabbos of Tavshin Ayin Dalet, and in this last week's Shabbos we read the Toichach. Tichla Shona v'kira lo yisayu, Tochel Shona v'berch yisayu. It should be a Shona Toiva Mesuka. It should be a Shnas Gula B'Yeshua, a year in which we will be Zoichet to Mashiach Tzadkeinu and to Binyan Beis HaMikdash B'mheiro V'yomeinu. Amen.